nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut. Today we'll go bird watching, tomorrow we'll catch toads. The next day we'll take photographs of bugs along the road. I never get the feeling that I'm in a rut. That's why I'm a nature nut. Well, I'm a nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut. Hi there, and congratulations. You're watching a show about bees, ants, and wasps, the social insects. Don't you love those congratulations letters that you get sometimes when you buy things? I once bought a new pail for a lab I was working in. There was a letter inside it congratulating me on my excellent choice of pails. So if they can do it, so can I. Congratulations, I think you're going to like the world of bees and ants and wasps. Now, speaking of letters, I want to start, though, by showing you a few letters that I've been getting. I get a lot of letters from nature nuts out there. Here's a beauty from Stephanie LeBou from Ontario. 5 years old, Stephanie drew me this lovely picture of myself and a tiger beetle. Tiger beetle is about the size of a black lab. Stephanie, if I ever find a tiger beetle that big, I'm going to be one happy guy. But I will also be frightened because a tiger beetle of that size would be a dangerous creature indeed. Now, not all of our viewers are of the 5-year-old persuasion. Here's one that begins, Dear John, I can't remember when I've turned on the TV on a Sunday morning, but this morning I did, and I turned on our PBS Channel 30 in Toledo, Ohio. A man was talking about ladybugs, and I watched with interest. It was an excellent program. And at the end, I watched the credits to see who the speaker was. I was surprised to see that it was John Acorn, and as that is not a very common name, I assume it was you. And that's from Robert Graves, Professor Emeritus at Bowling Green State University, coincidentally a tiger beetle specialist himself. So, always nice to hear from the academic community as well as the preschool community. Here's another one. I got a kick out of this one. It's a change of address card addressed to me. You turn it over, the place where you put your old address and your new address, completely blank. So whoever you are, I hope you're enjoying the new place and look forward to the housewarming party. Now, with that out of the way, let's get on to the world of bees, ants, and wasps, social insects. No termites, though. Hope you're not too disappointed.
There is one species of mammal that lives like a social insect, with a queen and many workers. It's called the naked mole rat.
Well, these are wasps, but you know the word wasp can have many different meanings. In fact, tens of thousands of different meanings because there are a lot of different kinds of wasps in this world. Most of them are solitary and parasitic, so you'll see the female wasp looking for another insect to lay her egg on or in. And they never come together in groups or colonies. These yellow jackets, on the other hand, and there are quite a few different kinds of yellow jackets, they're social insects. They live in colonies. They live in great groups. Vespula is their technical name. And I imagine that under this slab of concrete there must be some sort of an open cavity, and the wasps are treating it the way they would a rodent burrow in nature or a little cave of some sort, and inside there they'll have a paper nest. Now I'll come back to the subject of paper nests in a moment, but watch how they're coming in and out of the opening of that nest. Some of them are obviously carrying something in their legs. Others are not obviously carrying anything, although they could have something in their crop, sort of a pouch in the throat. Most of the time they'll be bringing back the bodies of dead insects that they've killed. They find them on the plants, they grab them, they kill them, and they bring them back to use them to feed themselves, and they're developing larvae in the nest. Very interesting. Although they will also feed on other things, especially late in the summer they'll feed on rotten fruit, and they'll also take little pieces off meat. So this is why it's so easy to attract them to a picnic or to a fish cleaning table or virtually any source of wasp edible stuff, especially late in the summer. And of course, late in the summer, that's when the hives are the biggest, the nests are the biggest, and they're the more of the wasps are in the late summer. There are more wasps in late summer because the nests are bigger. That's what I'm trying to say. Interesting things indeed, these yellow jackets. You don't want to get too close because they do get quite riled up and their stings hurt like crazy, let me tell you. Well, this little patch of aster flowers is just abuzz with activity. We've had some Milbert's tortoiseshell butterflies here. There's one over there. And lots of bees, mostly bumblebees here. At least 2 different species, one with yellow fur on the back and one with a little bit of red fur. Very nice. You know, they were originally called humble bees. And they do give the impression of being humble. They don't make you nervous at all. They're very peaceful, easygoing bees. And they are feeding on the nectar from these flowers, probing their little tongues into the flower, and they're also presumably picking up pollen, although I don't see a lot of pollen on the legs of these bees, so perhaps these flowers aren't producing a lot of pollen. That's a cabbage butterfly, that little white one. There are also here flies called hoverflies that look a lot like bees. Some of them look like bees, some of them look like wasps. The most common one here today looks a lot like a honeybee. And they can't sting. They're completely harmless, but they look like bees and wasps, so, you know, we avoid them and birds avoid them and all that sort of thing. It's easy to tell the two apart, though, with a little practice. The hoverflies have 2 wings instead of 4, and they have a flattened abdomen instead of a cylindrical abdomen. And they also have, their antennae are so short that you can barely see them, whereas the antennae of a wasp or a bee are a lot longer. Get to know your bees. If you can recognize them at a distance, you'll learn to avoid them. If you can recognize hoverflies, you won't worry about hoverflies. It's all a matter of being a functional nature nut. Well, here we have an ant hill. Now, ants that make hills are the easiest kinds of ants to find because you just find the hill and it's covered with ants. Right now, though, there aren't very many ants on this hill because it's late in the season. They're getting ready for winter and most of them are underground. These are black ants. I used to think when I was a kid that there were only 2 kinds of ants, red ants and black ants, and they were always at war. Well, the truth is there are actually about 20,000 different kinds of ants. Some of them are red, some of them are black. This is Formica podzolica, one of those 20,000 species of ants. And they're not really at war. We used to think that it was obvious that they were at war because if you took a shovel full of black ants and put it on the red ant nest, they'd have a little war. That would happen with almost any 2 kinds of predatory animals. A shovel full of weasels, if you put it on a pile of snapping turtles, they'd have a war too. Doesn't mean they're really at war. Not that you'd ever want to do that. Don't do it. Never. Don't even try. Think about it. Forget I ever said that.
Some social insects make others into slaves, while others are parasites that lay their eggs in another species' colony.
Well, these ants mess up the theory altogether, don't they? They're red in the middle and they're black on both ends. There's quite a few species of red and black ants around here, and I was hoping that they would be mixed in with some black ants, not because of war and not because of peace, but because of slavery. Some of these red and black ants, they'll go on slave raids. They'll enter into the anthill of the Formica podzolica, those black ants. They'll kill a bunch of workers. They'll create panic. They'll grab the pupae. They'll take the pupae back to their own anthill. They'll eat some of them, and the rest of them will hatch. And these poor little black ants, they have no idea what kind of ant they are when they hatch. So they just assume that they're red and black ants, and they become mindless slaves to the alien empire. the world of ants is absolutely full of those sorts of weird little intrigues. You ever try making an ant farm? You know, an ant colony that lives between two panes of glass and you can watch them go through their little tunnels and so on? It almost never works because you have to get the queen along with all the workers in order for the ant colony to keep going. And it's very difficult to find the queen when you're digging into a big hill of angry ants like this. On the other hand, I have seen some ant colonies that work very well. For example, my friend Terry Thorman at the Provincial Museum, he's got a colony of leafcutter ants going. Very, very impressive indeed. Let's go have a look. Leafcutter ants are some of the most impressive ants of all, and they're common in Latin America all the way up to southern Arizona and Texas in the States. This is my friend Terry Thorman, and he looks after a colony of 100,000 or so leafcutter ants here at the Provincial Museum of Alberta. Terry, introduce me to your ants.
Sure, John. Ants, John.
Pleased to meet you, ants. I'd shake your hands, but there's too much plastic in the way. So these, they gather leaves, and they take the leaves into these little fungus growing compartments here. Tell me about the...
Yes, well, they don't actually feed on the leaves. What they do is they take the leaves, cut them up, bring them back into the colonies, and they feed on a fungus that they grow on the leaves.
And this is the fungus, the white substance in these clear boxes here.
That's right. And it's actually, you can see the progression of the fungus up the boxes. It's very white at the bottom. That's because the leaves are really covered with the fungus. The top parts are the areas where they put new leaves in, and there's not as much fungus growing on it as yet.
How fast is this fungus growing? How many leaves do you feed them in the course of an average day?
Well, how about if I show you? That's
Excellent.
The easiest way. I have a box here that shows you probably about a third to a quarter of the number of leaves that we feed them on a daily basis.
No kidding. So this fungus must grow very quickly.
Yes, and it's eaten fairly quickly. 100,000 ants can go through a lot of fungus.
Wonderful. So, well, they must be hungry. Let's feed them.
Sure.
Tropical army ants don't really eat everything in their path, but they can be quite vicious if you don't step out of their way.
Ah, there goes one with the leaf. You know what I find really interesting about these ants is the variation in size among the workers. Everything from these tiny, tiny little ones right up to the gigantic big soldiers.
Yeah, the soldiers, their sole job is to defend the colony. They don't do any of the gathering of leaves or tending of the gardens or anything like that. The medium-sized ones are the ones that are primarily responsible for gathering leaves and taking them back to the colony. Then the very tiny ones do most of the work inside the gardens, tending the gardens, transplanting fungus, feeding the larvae, this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. They also guard against the parasitic
the flies,
forage flies too,
yes.
yeah.
You'll sometimes see a medium-sized worker carrying a leaf, and there may be 2 or 3 very tiny workers hitchhiking a ride on the leaf, and they're there to defend the worker that's carrying the leaf against a fly that parasitizes it.
Some of these ants are carrying chunks of fungus too. Do you think that's junk fungus that they're taking to the garbage dump?
I think so. My reasoning is that, there's fungus in every one of those gardens. There's no need to actually move good fungus from garden to garden. So anytime they're carrying junk fungus, I'm sure that's just what it is. It's going to the garbage heap. Of course, they do move eggs and larvae from garden to garden. After all, the queen's only in the one garden, so the eggs and larvae have to be dispersed throughout the colony.
And the queen is bigger even than the biggest soldiers.
Oh, yeah. Very big, fat-bodied thing. Quite a small head compared to the size of the thorax and the abdomen.
Have you ever seen the queen?
Just the once. There was one time when she attempted to leave one of the gardens and move to another one. It was interesting because the workers very quickly grabbed her and dragged her back into the original garden.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Wow, it's kind of like, Real queens. You rarely see them out in public, and it's a big event when it happens.
Yeah.
You know, I think, too, that they have a very appropriate genus name, don't you?
Yes.
The genus Atta?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because they're all Atta girl, Atta girl, Atta go.
Good way to encourage one another.
That's a complex thing they have to do. They're they're ants still. I mean, they're not all that smart. Ant humor. It's not the easiest thing to do. This is a bee tree. And these are bees. And you know, the funny thing about bees is that they're just wasps. They're social wasps that have evolved to eat pollen and nectar. They're not little predators like other social wasps. Still, these honeybees, these are honeybees, inside this hollow tree they've got a comb, a hive. It's made of wax. They produce the wax with their own bodies. They form it into little six-sided cells, and then in those cells they either raise their little bee grubs or they store honey, which is just nectar from flowers, or they store pollen, which they use to feed the grubs and themselves. Fascinating little critters. There's also a queen in there. She's a little bit bigger than the workers. She lays all the eggs. The workers are all females. They're all the daughters of the queen, but they never lay any eggs. And eventually, you know, they will produce some new queens and some new drones, the males, and they'll fly away and start their own colonies with a whole bunch of workers. Very complex thing, these bee societies. People have been getting honey from honeybees for more than 7,000 years. 7,000 years of getting stung by bees just to get honey. Is it worth it? All I can say is I'm glad I get my honey from the grocery store.
All social insects have other species of insects living with them. Some are harmful, but others just like the protection they get from their hosts.
My name is 4968, and I'm a tiny ant. I live below here in this great big colony with my mom and me. She is the queen here, and we're all working for her. We don't get paid much, but that's okay with me, because we live for free. And we don't care if it rains or thunders. We all stay dry 'cause we're living down under. It's kinda dark here, so antennas help us see. Deep, deep, we're gonna build a colony. Deep, deep, there's lots of work for you and me. We work in harmony. Woo! See me coming through that, pardon me, coming through.
My name is 308, and I'm a yellow jacket. I got a zinger stinger, so just stay away. Go ahead and make my day. Inside this paper thingy, we made it with saliva. We feed our grubbers with the bodies of dead bugs. We give them food, not hugs. And we don't care if it rains or thunders. Our nest is waterproof and that's no blunder. But it's kinda dark here, antennas help us see. Big, big, we're gonna build a colony. Big, big, there's lots of work for you and me. We work in harmony.
My name is 2022 and I'm a honeybee. I gather pollen and I drink those flowers dry. And then the way I fly, deep in that hollow bee tree, we keep it all in order. To make our lodgings, we just squeeze and out comes wax. And them's the facts. And we don't care if it rains or thunders. We all stay right here in our waxy
this is not your normal sort of average wasp nest, but I've already showed you the average sort of gray yellow jacket nest on other episodes, and I wanted to show you something different. This one I got from my friend Jim Ryan, and you know, some people, they keep dogs in the backyard as pets. Jim keeps yellow jacket wasps in a big screen cage, and he gives them colored paper that they chew up and make into their own kind of paper, and that's what they make the nest out of. Every one of these little colored strips is one mouthful of colored paper that they have reprocessed for making the nest. Can you imagine how much work went into that? Here's the hole that they go in and out of to gain access to the comb where they keep their little grubs and stuff. Jim and his wasp, they've created a new art form. It's beautiful. It's like something from the 60s or another planet. Isn't that amazing?
Hornets are just social wasps with painful stings. There is no scientific difference between the words wasp and hornet.
Well, I guess that's all the time we've got for bees, ants, and wasps now. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry we didn't get around to termites, but the fact is I just live in a place where there are no termites. It's a darn shame. Anyway, I want to leave you with one more thought before we go. You know, biologists these days, they think of these colonies not as a bunch of insects living together, but as a single superorganism. All of the workers, they're disembodied parts of the queen. The whole thing can weigh as much as a dog, and it has millions of mouths and millions of eyes and millions of legs, and even more millions of little claws and stomachs and, you know, stuff like that. Ooh, it just makes you itch with excitement when you think of it that way, doesn't it? Ooh, my. Anyway, until next time, I'm a nature nut, and I hope you are too. Yeah, you're probably sitting at home enjoying your own termites and laughing at me. Anyway, I won't hold it against you. See you later. Yeah, bye now.
Same time each and every week, uncensored and uncut.
No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.